Hi everyone, this is Haseena Patel from South Africa, Executive Director and Co-founder of Leave No Girl Behind International. And I am so privileged to interview someone that I love and respect, Eileen McDargh. We had a conversation last year and it was so awesome that I decided to do a part 2 with Eileen and she said yes. So welcome, Eileen.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I just have to tell the listeners who a lot of listeners will be girls, and I'd like to tell them a bit about you. So just bear with me while I introduce you properly. Everyone, Eileen has been helping organizations and individuals since the 1980s. She's helped them transform the life of their business and the business of their life through conversations that matter and connections that count. She also has amazing practical business know-how, life experiences, years of consulting to major national and international organizations, ranging from global pharmaceuticals in the US, armed forces, from healthcare associations to religious institutions. And here's an amazing achievement. In 2018, Global Gurus International, a British-based provider of resources for leadership, communication, and sales training, ranked Eileen as number one of the world's top 30 communication professionals, following a global survey of 22,000 business professionals. Apart from that, Eileen is also the author of 6 books, and she has appeared on network news, on radio programs, in business journals, and major metropolitan newspapers. So, Eileen, it's just amazing to have a conversation with you always. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And anything that we can do to help each other make this world better, I'm in. Count me in.
Oh, I agree, and I appreciate that. So I know that this conversation is centered towards girls. Let's start off with a question that, normally we're talking about or all the injustices in the world concerning girls, and it seems as if girls start off with a minus instead of a plus. And while that's true, let's start off with something positive, that why is being a girl an advantage and a source of strength and power in today's world?
Well, let me start by saying one thing, and this is to everyone who listens. I don't care whether it's man, woman, it doesn't matter. And this was something that a biologist friend of mine said to me years ago, and it made such an impact. And he said, Eileen, do you know what are the odds of a human egg being fertilized? No, don't know. The odds of a human egg being fertilized are anywhere from 200 to 600 million to 1.
Wow.
So when he said that, his name was John. I said, well, John, why are you telling me this? He said, Eileen, what this means is that you are not a mistake. You are meant to be here. And that's the first thing I want everyone who watches and listens to this to understand. You are here on purpose. So whether you are male, female, however you report gender, you're meant to be here. So your question was, why is being a girl an advantage and a strength in today's world? And here's what has struck me so much. What I see are girls worldwide who are speaking out about things that really matter. Let's start with Mahala. Mahala was 15 years old and insisted that she deserved an education as much as anyone else. And we know from her story the Taliban shot her. She's a Nobel Prize winner. She was 15. In fact, I made this is just within this past year. This young woman, Greta Thunberg, she's from Sweden. On Friday, students from around the world did not go to school, but instead protested the fact that we need to do something about climate change. Greta Thunberg was 15 years old, 16 years old, and she addressed the UN, and she called them out. She said, how dare you? You have done nothing. She was 15 years old. That's Greta from Sweden. Last year, tragically, it was a year ago in February, we had the horrible shooting at Park Lane, one of the high schools in Florida. So who was the leading voice about this? A young woman by the name of Emma Gonzalez, who stood in front of thousands in Washington, D.C. and was silent for 4 minutes. Do you know how much courage it takes to be silent for 4 minutes? Because those 4 minutes represented the time that shooter had to kill those students at Park Lane. So what I'm saying is that the voices that are speaking out are girls. They are girls. I don't see young men speaking out so much, though that's not true. There was that one young man in Park Lane, but it is girls who are saying, you know what? I want to claim my world in all the different ways. So I think the fact that girls are at the forefront, the media is catching on to them. There was just another young girl, she was 12, she's 12 in San Francisco, that challenged one of our senators for doing nothing related to climate change. 12 years old. So I think it's a great time because we have role models that are out there right now.
Yes. Well, all the examples you mentioned they're just such proof that you can be a strong girl, you can go out there and do what you believe in, say what you believe in. I remember how powerful it was when I watched a video clip of, what was her name, Emma Gonzalez, after the Parkland shooting, March for Our Lives, and it was unreal that she stood there and did what basically no adult was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just, and none of these they didn't have any practice. Yeah. You know, they weren't on the Park Lane had a pretty good, solid debate team, and Emma might have been part of that. I don't remember on that history. Mm-hmm. But for all of these young girls, they're just, and I bet you anything, they're scared to death when they do it. Yeah. But it's bigger than they are, and they stand up. Which is not to say that, okay, every girl who listens to this is supposed to go and do something earth-shattering. It's that you are true to yourself, and you are willing to speak truth to power. And truth to power doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's the UN or the president or whatever. It's just what is true for you, because you do have a right and you are here on purpose.
Yes, that is true. And let's go deeper with this. All these girls who are speaking out, whether it is to the UN or whether it is within their own community or their family, what advice do you have for girls and young women about how to make themselves heard by others, no matter what they're doing, so that they can be taken seriously and get the support to carry out their ideas, just like the girls that you mentioned have done?
Okay, so I'm going to give you some communication tips. And by the way, this is for everyone who's a female, because we have a tendency to get in our own way with communication. So here's the first thing. I don't care whether you are in whatever group you're in. We need to take up space. And by taking up space, what I mean is physical space. So often, I don't know quite how to do this with you can't see me from your computer, but I've watched women, we kind of like shrink down. You know, we cross our legs, we sit, it's like, just don't pay any attention to me. Take up space. Put your both hands, if you're sitting in a chair, you got your hands on either side, your feet are planted, and you are there. What's interesting to me is also our voices. The more deliberate we can speak, not, well, I mean, I've listened to breathy voices, just practice. Your voice carries you. Mm-hmm. And when we become centered and speak more slowly, people pay attention. what's so interesting is that oftentimes I get a telephone call, and people are asking me to come and address their organizations. And inevitably, and many times they're men, and inevitably, when I meet them, the man will say, "You didn't sound that short." I'm short. I'm 5'1". I'm a peanut on the scheme of things. And I have to laugh, where he'll say, "You didn't look that short on your video." And I'm thinking, what does short sound like? Because the picture in their head is that if you're going to be short, you got to talk like this. So it always just makes me laugh. But the truth in that, first take up physical space, allow your voice to be strong, speak slowly. Here's another thing, is when you speak, do not discount what you say. I've heard women say, "Well, I might be wrong about this, but cut that out. This is what I think." Don't discount what you say. Here's the other thing. Women also sometimes have a tendency to make their voices go up at the end of a sentence as if it's a question. So, for example, I could say, "I think it's going to rain today." There's a question there. "I believe that we ought to balance the budget." And it goes up like that. So the inflection, don't let it go up at the end of the sentence, because you also, in that sound of going up, making it a question, you discount what it is that you just said. You're saying, "I'm not too sure about what I just said." So I think those are some things that can help us be heard.
It's funny what you say about the shortness, because here's someone who's really short, 4'11.5", so I can relate.
See, and you don't sound short.
Oh, thank you. It's been a lifetime of working at it.
Well, all right, so I will tell you one thing I did one time. It was this gentleman, and I was on a stage, and he was very arrogant and very pompous, and he was very tall. And so he came up, to thank me, and he just kind of, in a way, almost discounted what I said, and he stood beside me, and I said, "Just remember, I look up your nose." And the audience, whatever it was he said, the audience broke up. He didn't know what to do with this. And I thought, buddy, I'm going to put you in your place. You're kind of like patting me on the head. I just want you to know what I'm looking at. And it was, it probably wasn't the best thing, but it was very funny. And all of us in the group loved it. Anyway, so you feel free to use that anytime.
And then what about when girls, for example, they have these fears and inadequacies, and a lot of times, we all do, no matter our gender, we have these fears and inadequacies, but a lot of times girls have been told that they're less, or the world tells them there's not enough coverage of women's sports. In different ways, they're being told that they're less. How do they come across being heard, making a statement that they want to make, yet being able to overcome these ingrained inadequacies?
And that's a very difficult question. And the reason is that we all create the image of ourselves in our head. And that image is often put there by the people around us, what we've been told, what we hear. And I guess my first thought would be, how do you see yourself? Do you really believe that all of this is true of you? And it really is head talk. It really is head talk. For years, when I was younger, I would shrink back. I would buy into whatever was being told to me. And it's kind of like, girls, you're to be seen and not heard. That was one of the things when I was growing up. And it actually, the way I began to overcome it was to do one thing that you're afraid of doing. Just test yourself. And sometimes it takes a mentor. Sometimes it takes someone who sees something in us that we don't. And instead of discounting and say, oh, okay, I'll do that. And for me, when I was in high school, a freshman in high school, so that would have put me, 14 years old, a teacher came to me and she said, I want you to stay after school. And I was a good student, but I was very quiet. And I said, well, what, did I do something wrong? She said, no, you're going to be on the debate team. I went, oh, no way I'm going to be on the debate team. She said, yes, I think you have great possibility. I want you to do this. And because she saw something in me, that belief in me, and then for me saying, okay, I'll step out and I'll try it. Doesn't mean I have to stay with it for the rest of my life, but because of that, I make my living with the word. I make my living now speaking and writing. And that would not have happened, number one, had someone not seen that in me, but number two, had I shrunk back and not tried one of the things I was afraid of. So I think that really is it, is that to develop our own self-confidence, do one thing that you're afraid of.
And I think that's a great challenge for everyone listening. You know, just right now, while you're listening to the interview, to think of one thing that you're going to do that you're afraid of, and write it down afterwards. I think that
it can be small. It can be small. I mean, maybe one of the things you're afraid of is asking for, I don't know, a second helping at dinner, or maybe the thing that you're concerned about is singing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, I can't sing. You know, everybody can sing. Might not be as best as the next person. See, let me say something else, because I want to be very clear. Mm-hmm. I think one of the worst things that we can do to our levels of confidence is to become hooked on social media, specifically Instagram, Facebook, any of those things in which we follow our peers. And they all look like they have their life so together. They're doing wonderful things and we're not. I don't know how true that stuff is.
Yeah.
But I do believe that social media and buying into other people's lives and then thinking that we come up short is a terrible thing. So if I had my druthers, I'd say put away the phone. Mm-hmm. Don't look at what other people are doing. Just stop. Just stop, because I think this puts some dangerous things in our heads.
Yeah.
And I also bully on Twitter. I mean, come on, I have a president of the United States who's the biggest bullier of going. You know.
Yes, I so agree with you when it comes to that. You know, we always tell our girls that you're comparing your internal feelings or what you know about yourself inside with someone's external, because you don't know what they're going through inside, and it's such an unfair comparison.
Well, and it's not communication. You can't tell me 146 characters or whatever, however many is allowed on Twitter right now, is real communication. It's flat, it's sterile, and that's why people get their feelings hurt. That's why people feel like people don't like them, because there is these 146 characters of put down. Leave it alone. That's not communication.
Yes.
It's a slogan. It's a billboard, but it's not communication.
And, you know, each individual has their own life journey. It's not a race. It's your journey. It's your personal journey, which is so sacred. It's not to be compared.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what is your definition of resiliency, and how would you say a young woman can develop resiliency? I feel it's a quality everyone needs. And since we're talking about girls, yes, they need that.
So first off, my dictionary definition of resiliency for the Eileen dictionary is very different from what is everybody else's dictionary. So if I were to ask people what resiliency is, they'd say, well, it means to bounce back. I do not believe there's such a thing as that in the human system. It's one thing if you're a tree and you bend and you're resilient and you go back to your original shape. But for the human being, it is, how do I grow through? It's all about growth. How do I grow through challenge or opportunity so that I end up wiser and better on the other side? Notice I said challenge or opportunity, because I think people believe that resiliency is, okay, something terrible happened and now I've got to become resilient. Resiliency at the end of the day is, how do you manage your energy? And if you think about it, energy is the capacity to do work. What is it that will give you energy? What depletes your energy? So when I think of being resilient, what I'm thinking about are, what are the things that I do first in my head? How do I think? What do I think? And is it giving me energy or is it depleting energy? If I'm saying, I'm terrible, I'm horrible, I'm afraid, I can't do this, my energy just goes. I'm saying it's a bad, bad world and I'll never be anything. There goes all your energy. So it's, what is it that I think? Then what is it that I do? How do I get my energy back? You know, I think having conversations like this, and when you do your work that you do, so that no girl left behind, that energizes you. When you look in their faces and they tell you, oh my God, I got something out of this. I know, in your heart, you have energy because you're doing work that's meaningful. So at the end of the day, resiliency is about growth. It's about looking at what are your energy maintainers and what are your energy drainers, and to have more of the maintainers and less of the drainers.
I love that definition. I know we're coming to the end of the interview, but there's still something I want to ask you about. How would you say a girl who is, say, at school, she's trying to find her passion and her purpose and direction, how can she design her life and not let her circumstances define who she is?
I think that there are some people who, from the minute they're born, they say, I'm going to be a doctor. And they know it. No worries. Yeah. I have a feeling there are more people who are like me, in which we're not sure where it goes. And so I think it is a process of discovery. You use the word journey. Well, when you're on a journey, sometimes you hit a dead end. Oh, that wasn't that. It's over here. So I think there's a couple things. Number one, what brings you joy? What brings you joy in the doing? Okay, when you say, what is it that I want to, well, what brings me joy? And what about that? Because somewhere in that might be something for me as I get older. I also think there's, what is it that I don't want? Sometimes instead of saying goal setting, go the opposite way. I don't want this. I don't care for this. So by saying what I don't want, perhaps the clarity then of what I do want comes up. Yeah. So, and I think to acknowledge that a decision today doesn't mean that you can't make a different decision tomorrow. Because if in fact I believe we grow and learn, as I grow and learn, this could shift, and we're in different stages of our life. So the context of our life. It's one thing when you're an adolescent, the context of your life. You know, you're trying to figure out everything from what's physically going on with your body, with hormones and everything. That's very different than when you're going to be 25 years old and the context is different. Or when if you marry and have children, that's a very different context. Yeah. So I think to realize and acknowledge that we are all on this journey. And the more I can be truthful to what's happening in my journey now, then I can stay on that road. I can stay on that road.
I love that answer. Just having that authenticity and having that truth. I call it being stripped to the core, because there is nothing there that's not you. And that's so the best place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. And so I have to ask you, what put you on this journey where you are now? How did you make this decision?
To
start No Girls Left Behind.
It was quite an incredible thing. I had been mentoring girls, and my sister Shamima kind of joined me, and it was very small scale, just a few girls here and there. Because I was always for girls' rights, I knew that was something that was so deep in my heart. I spoke out against inequality all the time, even at school. And there was gender equality in those years, big time. So when it happened, I was Shamima and I were writing a book together called Leave No Girl Behind, and we wanted advice from 1,000 women around the world. And then we decided to include some men. I got on the phone in 2010 with Dr. Wayne Dyer on his radio show and asked him what advice he had for his daughters. And I found that so profound, and I said, Dr. Dyer, please can we use this in your book? And he said, yes, I'm giving you permission on national radio, and it's not costing you a penny. And but that was the turning point, because it became, how can we make a shift on this planet for girls' empowerment? Just that conversation was, it was a huge shift for us. So that's how it started.
So what I hear you saying is that you followed something that helped your heart. That's where you started. And you were open to possibilities. You see, I think we have no clue what are the possibilities that await for us. But when we have the intention, when you have the intention of helping young women, that the universe begins to open up doors for you that you never thought you would ever have. And then you had to be willing to walk through those doors.
Yes. You summed that up nicely.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation.
Yes, it has. Thank you so much for your time and your words of wisdom. I'm so excited for all the girls, especially, that this is going to reach, and even for parents of all young people, but specifically girls, because it's so necessary that they think this way. And yeah, I really just want to thank you, Eileen. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
You have a good day, and I look forward to many more conversations.
That would be great. That would be great. And thank you again for asking me.